Maybe I can move this over here, and it'll look like I'm smart because there's books behind me.
For the last part of this, they're gonna be like, "Oh, Jason, you're so astute."
I know, right?
Let's go.
What a lovely day!
Andy, there's a whole world out there. Jump in.
Can you dig it?
Yeah,
You must always pay strict attention.
I was just completely enamored by it the entire time.
Dude, he did not have to go that hard.
I know, man. Isn't it wild?
TheJaredcast.
So it begins.
Good morning, ladies and gents and everyone else. How you doing today? It's a wonderful Monday morning here on the Jaredcast. My name is Jared A. I'm here as always with my co-producer, co-host Jared L. How you doing today, Jared?
I'm good. I had a pretty good week. We never gave an update on the time Tommy Wiseau underwear and DVD.
Oh, yeah,
it came.
yeah.
I lied. It wasn't stolen. It was just delayed, and they lied to me. So we're good. Fear not. I know the audience was worried.
Yeah.
But I'm doing good. I'm having a good time. How are you?
I'm doing good. I just watched A Quiet Place Part 2, so I'm pretty stoked on life in general.
I'm jealous.
Yeah. Anyway, with us today we have another fancy schmancy guest. We got one of our former instructors from San Francisco State University. We got Jason here in the house. How you doing today, Jason?
I'm doing all right. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah.
We're glad to have you, man. We're glad to have you. Jason's one of those people that one of the few people who can figuratively and literally school me in cinema stuff. So I'm very excited for this episode. Wherein we talk about movies and memory. So we're talking about three completely different takes on memory today. We got Paris, Texas, and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and Blade Runner. So it's a fun one today. I'm excited for it. I guess besides Paris, Texas, which is for the most part a massive bummer. But it's all good. It's all good. But before that, we got a fun little top three, don't we?
We do. We always let the guest pick the topic, and we always offer up the top three. Jason here was kindly enough to give us both, and so these are both Jason joints. If you hate them, let him know. But we got a great one. It's top three flashback scenes, really going in with the memory theme, pairing very nicely. Jason, what do you have at number 3 for us?
My number 3 top flashback is from The Thin Blue Line. Errol Morris's 1986 documentary that really kind of paved the way for more stylized documentaries, and he does a kind of Rashomon approach to recreating these testimonies and memories of a shooting of a police officer. And I just remember being so struck by these kind of film noir lit, really kind of vibrant color flying milkshakes that the police officer had thrown when her colleague was shot. She threw her McDonald's milkshake out the window, and there's all of this coverage and angles, and it splashes, and it's just this like one, and then everyone tells the story differently, and so the milkshake kind of goes flying in different ways. And so anyway, that was my number 3 flashback.
Yeah.
Nice,
excellent choice.
That's my number 1 milkshake in the cinema history.
Mine's There Will Be Blood, but that's
Right.
followed by Pulp Fiction. Anyway,
is it my turn?
Yeah, why not?
All right,
I'll let you steal. I told you before we had this that I have a very Jared list, and so I'm worried you're gonna steal it, but I'm gonna let you steal it anyway.
It's all good. I got my number 3 is the Massacre of the Valkyrie from Thor Ragnarok. It's just like a few almost silent. There's like a little bit of music and like a woof sound effect. But I think it's really innovative. It's haunting. It's beautiful. You get these. You see why Tessa Thompson's character is an alcoholic and why she doesn't want to be the hero. Why she doesn't want to team up with Thor, and it helps you understand her and understand why, because she saw all of her sisters die in battle, and it's really beautifully shot. They use like they used, instead of a green screen, I think they used like a black background, and then they had these kind of weird rotating lights to get that chiaroscuro effect, and it's really really awesome. It looks like a I forget the guy's name, but it like an older painting, and every shot in the scene looks like an older painting. So I really like that.
Awesome. My number 3 is my only animated entry on the list, and I feel like it shows the power of memory, and not only that, the power of food. And I've got Ratatouille with Anton Ego's flashback when he tastes the ratatouille. I
So
love it.
good.
I think it's fantastic. It's a perfect representation of how a single taste can immediately bring something back to you. And I was floored. Other than that, I kind of fall in the camp that Ratatouille's a little overrated for the most part. But that scene's fucking fantastic, and I love every second of it. And so it's my number 3.
Hell yeah.
Ratatouille was my number 2.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Maybe I have a very Jason list.
I mean, I agree. I'm not a huge fan of that film, but that moment is, I think, the best part of the entire movie. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that there are no other flashbacks, and they commit to Anton as this one type of character for so long that there's, even though it's like a payoff that you didn't even know was being built towards. And so when it
Yeah.
comes, it's like, what does David Mamet always says, like, the best moments feel inevitable but also surprising. And like that moment feels like it's surprising when it happens because you didn't think they'd go there with him, but it also makes perfect fucking sense. You're like,
Yeah.
and so it's short, it's just a one-off, and they move on, but it says like so much. And like good filmmaking, you say so much with just a little bit. If you're doing it well, you get a lot of bang for your buck, and that's a great moment. So good choice, Jerry.
Thank you. You too.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. My number 2 went a little was also animated, but it's part of a live action film. It's the origin story of Oren Ishii from Kill Bill Volume 1. I love this scene, or this sequence. It's deliciously over the top and really beautifully animated as well. It sets up one of my favorite Tarantino villains, and like, of a movie that's basically a giant highlight reel. It's one of my top highlights in that film, and I love it a lot.
That's a good one.
Yeah. For my number 2, I'm going a live action. I'm following in Jared's footsteps. I'm get some in person stuff with a movie that I think not enough people have seen. One that deserves to be seen by way more people, and that's the Safdie brothers' Good Time with Ray's flashback. Ray just comes out of nowhere and steals the entire movie with this weird story of how he was selling acid and the cops came. But it's fantastic. It's an editing masterclass in flashback. It's a use of voiceover that doesn't get stale. The cutting between him in the back of the car to now is fantastic. Everything about it is just captivating, and I love every second of it.
So good.
That's a great movie.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm making my own rules, and so for number 1, I have 2 films
Ooh.
in a tie, partially because they kind of do the exact same thing. And the 2 movies are Sunset Boulevard and La Jetée, in that both of them start with a character's death, In one film, you know that they're dead, and the other, you don't quite know what's happening. But everything spins from this moment in the past, or the future, depending on how you want to think about it in La Jetée. And the rest of the film is all kind of leading up to understanding what that flashback means. And so they kind of, they're just these table setting moments in time that then kick everything else off. And that first shot of William Holden dead in the swimming pool, like floating upside down, is just so wonderful. And La Jetée, obviously, like the still frame of seeing yourself die, also quite striking. So anyway, those are the two I thought of kind of right out of the gate.
Yeah, excellent choice.
I think I was the only person in the crowd at SFSU when we watched that enjoyed it. I think everybody else fell asleep.
You know about La Jetée?
But I was like, but I
That
was
movie's
like, I love
awesome.
this.
Oh, I love it.
But I think I heard 6 different snores from around me.
Nice. I kept it contemporary for my number one. It's a scene from the film, the 2002 film Hero. Honestly, just thinking about this scene makes me want to rewatch the entire movie again. I've seen it multiple times since I was a little kid, and it's if I was like gun to my head, I have to pick a top 5 favorite movies. This is up there. But it's the fight between Nameless and Sky in the chess house. So the film is kind of like a Rashomon style thing, and Jet Li's character is recounting how he defeated Donnie Yen's character, who's like one of the greatest warriors in the land, and the whole movie is basically flashbacks like that. But I love this fight especially. It sets the tone for the movie, establishing not just a martial arts epic, but also like a living, breathing poem, and it's this also like really violent ballet between the two, where they picture each other in black and white. They picture fighting each other and what the result of that fight would be. And it's in the rain, and it's in a chess house, so they were just playing chess, and it's so cool. I love everything about this scene, and I it's like this is like one of my comfort movies too, and I just love watching it.
Yeah. You've been like in tune with the universe for recommendations for me, because now you're the second person this week to recommend Hero and Mitchell and the Machines, and so I feel like I owe it to myself to watch those.
Mitchell was good. I watched that with my daughters. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I've heard nothing but good things, and it keeps coming up. So maybe this is the week.
It's about a film major, Jared. You have to.
I know. I feel like it's gonna be too real and hurt my feelings. I'm scared. No, my number one is we're going to Korea for this one. One of my favorite Korean directors, if not my favorite Korean director, Park Chan-wook, with Old Boy. Kind of the climax of the film comes a brief 2-minute scene about the trauma that our antagonist has been dealing with. And I think it's an excellent way to show how trauma carries with you. I don't want to give too much away, because it's a great film and everybody should watch it if they haven't. And it's kind of a big one. But it does something that I don't know if I've seen in another movie, or I can't place in my head, at least at this time. And that's, you see past him and current him like switching places in the flashback. You get the old man holding a hand and the younger version of him, and I think it's great. Such a simple execution, just says so much about trauma and how it sticks with you, and for that reason, number one.
All right.
Amazing. Yeah. Great list, guys. That was a good one.
Mm-hmm. Only one, same one too. Usually there's like at least 2 or close to it. So
Yeah, I was worried.
I count that as a win.
Nice. Alrighty. Shall we get into Paris, Texas?
I think we shall. But before we do,
Cool.
Reviews.
We've got everybody's favorite segment. Jared reads poorly written reviews of movies that we're watching because it's funny and it makes him laugh and stuff. Today's installment from Paris, Texas comes from D. Stephenson 3. Gave it a 1 out of 10, saying, "Yes, this is the worst film ever made." The description goes as thus: I went to see this film when it came out, even so many decades on it, and they're still number one as the worst film I have ever seen. It has no redeeming features. It is too long, has no story, honestly. It's poorly shot. The music is annoying, impossibly to even sleep through it. The acting is abysmal. There was, I seem to remember, some gratuitous nudity as well. A waste of film stock. What makes this even worse is that it's not just crap, it's pretentious crap. I have been waiting for it to appear on my television just to confirm my suspicions, but I guess the advertiser would not touch it with a 10-foot pole. Usually, even bad films have some redeeming features, but this film does not.
I don't know. That was pretty well written, I thought.
They're well written, but they're always way too aggressive or have a ton of typos.
It's pretty.
These are all pretty great films. So the poorly written reviews are all just very angry about them. Not so much as funny as sometimes we get, where it's just nonsense.
It's funny.
Oh yeah, dude.
Nonetheless, that's D. Stephenson 3.
All right, D. Stephenson.
Paris, Texas.
Thanks, D. Stephenson.
Yeah.
D. Stephenson. Oh man, what did they say about it being pretentious?
It's not just crap; it's pretentious crap.
Yeah.
but I love that he's secretly hoping that it'll be on television. So
Yeah,
he can
like
watch
he wants
it
to rewatch it. It's a waste of film stock, but he's like, I kind of want to give it another shot.
He tasted this once and it was crap, but I'm gonna taste it again. Just to make sure that it's crap.
Honestly, all my favorite movies are pretentious crap, so it's all good.
Also, what made him review it in 2007 if he didn't get to rewatch it and it came out that long ago? Something happened where this guy was like, "Oh yeah, Paris, Texas.
That's
I
right.
need to go shit on that movie on IMDb."
Oh sheesh. Crazy. I like Paris, Texas quite a bit. It was the first movie that I thought of when Jason suggested this topic. I think it's kind of cool too because all three of these films deal with memory in a very specific way. And Paris, Texas, I think is the only of these three, it's the only one that you don't really see or I guess in Blade Runner you see a fake past, but you don't really see the past ever. You don't get any flashbacks. You just kind of you see the crater that's left behind by this traumatic incident between Harry Dean Stanton's character Travis and his family, and I love that about it. I love that you get to see that you never get to see the painful memory. You just get to see the consequence of what happened to him. I think there's something interesting about humans, and the way we're fascinated with craters and with ruins, and there's countless documentaries about all that stuff, and that same combo of fear and of wonder and dread when you see a giant crater is I feel the same way when I see the finale in this film, when I see that the devastation on Travis's life and on Jane's life, and so that's why this movie was really it resonated really deeply with me when my brother showed it to me, actually just last year. So this is only my second viewing of the film, and I love everything. I love almost everything about it. Harry Dean Stanton is one of my favorite actors of all time. and this is my favorite performance from him that I've seen so far. I love what's her name, Natasha Kinski as Jane. That she's really good as well. And I love the cinematography by Robbie Mueller. And I'll get into that a little bit later. And I love the tone of the movie. I love the pace of the movie. It's very slow. It's very deliberate, not in like a meditative way, more like in a just like you're just walking. And for a lot of the movie, that's what it is. And so I gave it a 9.7. I think there's also this brilliant and persistent sense of intimacy, even though there's like these really wide landscape shots, which I think is really hard to do. So yeah, I really enjoy it. What do you guys think of it? Starting with Jason.
I like it too. It's my second viewing. My first viewing was like 20 years ago, when I was just sort of inhaling indie art house films when I was your age. And it left an impression then, mostly for the cinematography. And I just remember, what I remember from 20 years ago was the way that Jane would come into different rooms, the coffee room and the kitchen and all these different kind of fantasies. And I remember that. And then the flip where you see it from her point of view and there like isn't even a wall around the mirror. And I just remember the mise en scène of the film being really striking. Watching it again, I think the cinematography by Robbie Mueller is amazing. One thing that I was excited about seeing in the credits was that Agnes Godard was his AC. And she's my favorite cinematographer. She does all of Claire Denis films. Yeah. So I didn't realize she'd worked on that, but that was very exciting.
Yeah. I think Claire Denis worked on the movie too, right?
Oh, did she? Maybe I didn't make it down the credits enough.
I think she was the AD, I'm pretty sure, but I'm not entirely sure.
Dude, he had Claire Denis and Agnes Godard. Like, talk about a varsity team crew.
Yeah, dude.
That's great. I appreciate what you said about the crater, and I think I applaud the film for setting up all this stuff in the front end about like what happened to you. Did you get into trouble? Blah, 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 and then not feeling any kind of impulse to solve any of that.
Yeah.
They give you this little taste. They're like, Natasha Kinski like burned the house down while he was in it and fled with their boy. And he's like, and then I just walked. And I came out of that walk 4 years later, and that's it. Like, I like movies that do that, they kind of lead you along and they're like, but I'm not going to give you what you want,
Yeah, dude.
So that takes discipline and courage because it can be really frustrating. Like, obviously, D. Stephenson didn't appreciate that he didn't get the answers that he thought he was going to get in the beginning. So I thought that was cool. I don't want to, I can stop there for now.
Yeah, what would you rate it out of 10?
Oh, right. My rating. I think I'd give it like an 8.5. And some of that isn't really the fault of the film. Like,
appropriate score.
Yeah, like 80s. It's not some hyperbolic 9.7, right?
The second Jared said 9.7, 4 eyebrows got raised simultaneously.
I love it.
It's a great movie. It's a great movie. Yeah. And I think part of what I don't love about it is not its fault. It's just those like early mid 80s indie films just feel so dated in terms of the look of them, and I have a hard time like losing myself in the movie. And I think it's actually its best when it's a little bit more abstract, like when Robbie Mueller gets to play with all the colored lights and those last few shots of him in the parking garage are just fucking sublime. Those moments are wonderful, and they kind of transcend that moment, historically. So anyway, but it's a great movie.
Yeah. I also agree. I think it was a good movie. This was my first viewing. I had not seen it. I'm a failure, I know. I didn't join the second viewing club. Oh, also, before I get into it, I can confirm Claire Denis was the AD on it.
Oh, thanks, Jared.
So, star crew. But yeah, I liked it. I think I liked it the least out of, well, not I think. I know I liked it the least out of the three of us. But with art house movies, it kind of falls less in line with what I like. And I think that's it. Like, that's that's the whole thing. It just comes down to my preference on what I like to watch. It was beautifully shot. The score, a lot of people hated on when I was looking for a bad review. Everybody mentioned how terrible the score was. I like it. It's weird. It's like an artsy western kind of score,
Yeah,
but it's
dude.
very isolating. The
Mhm.
single guitar makes you feel as lonely as he does, and I think it's an effective one because of that. Harry Dean Stanton killed it. Natasha something, I can't remember her last name,
Dude,
also killed
that's
it.
Klaus Kinski's daughter,
Oh,
Nastasi Kinski.
never mind. I will remember her last name now. Um, yeah, she was brilliant in it. I think she was the highlight of the acting performances. Besides them, I wasn't too blown away by any other performances, but I didn't really need to be. The story's about them, and everybody takes a back seat, and I think that kind of showed in their performances. Um, besides that, I loved it. I liked, especially what Jason was saying, where it doesn't give you what you want. I was frustrated for the first hour and a half of the movie because of that, but come the finale, and what a brilliant finale it was! It redeemed it, and it made the whole thing worth it. It earned him walking around nothingness for an hour and a half plus. And so, because of that, I gave it a 7.4. I still really enjoyed it, but I could have used a little more meat on the bones toward the beginning of the film. Well,
Mm.
more so toward the middle of the film. Um, but yeah, that's my base thoughts.
I
For sure.
liked for what it's worth, I thought the kid was good. Like,
Yeah.
and I respected that, like, Wim Wenders, like, didn't cut around him. He, like, threw him in these long takes, and
Yeah,
he sat him down next to Harry Dean Stanton, and he was like, all right, do your thing. And, like, it didn't feel forced, or like, some of these
yeah,
kid actors, they got great faces, and then but they're just so stiff or unnatural.
hmm,
And I thought this kid held his own.
yeah,
So
yeah.
props to
I will
him.
I will actually agree with you. I forgot about the kid.
Yeah.
But like his dad or his stepdad,
Dean
I
Stockwell.
wasn't.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was not feeling his performance at
I
any
agree.
point of the
Yeah, yeah,
entire
yeah.
film. So I think it's mostly him that left a sour taste. I
Okay.
did like the dynamic between him and his wife is very interesting though,
Yeah.
and I kind of wish they hit that a little harder. The he's our kid now. Why should we let like we raised him?
Yeah.
We're his parents. Why should we? And
Hmm.
I think that was a super interesting dynamic for them to throw in, and it gave me something nice to chew on for a bit. I think it was resolved rather quickly with them just being like, "Heh, see ya," and then nobody else really
Yeah.
like following up. Like if they were on like a big hunt too, it might have taken away in terms of the strength of the ending, but I think it would have been a cool little addition to see that wrap up a little more nicely.
Hmm.
So while I didn't like their performances too much, I loved the dynamic between them.
Hmm.
Yeah. I feel it. I feel it. I agree about Hunter as well. Like he's like besides the performance, like he's also just a really strongly written character. He has his own perspective, and he considers everything that happens to him before he acts. He has his own outlook on life and his own needs and wants as on on paper as a character in the script. And I like that he. Um, I love the scene when they're watching the home video on Super 8, and he, like, you can tell that Hunter's seen it before, and when he gets to see it again, he's like, okay, this is why like, this is why this kid's familiar with the dad. And you get to I love the way they juxtapose his reaction to seeing the video again, and then seeing seeing Travis see the video for the first time, and remember what Jane was like. And I think that's a super heartbreaking scene.
That seems great.
Um,
The blocking's
y-
great too. The way that everyone's situated so they can look
Yeah.
at each other, but and not him, and you see
Hmm.
them responding to his response to the image, and it's wonderful.
Hmm.
it's so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I also I agree with about the couple with what's their names, Anne and Walt.
Mm.
I always find myself, like, curious, like, what happened to them after. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you would fit it in there because like the script was already 160 pages long.
Yeah, it's
Um,
already a very long movie.
written by the great Sam Shepard, by the way. I forgot to shout him
Yeah.
out. Yeah, but I like the note about the slide guitar as well in the score. I think it evokes the mood and atmosphere of a western. I love the sense of loneliness and boredom that comes out of it. And they switch to like a finger picking song when he goes into civilization because it's like a lot more gentle and he has people around him. But when Hunter and Travis are chasing Jane after the bank, the score is like a mishmash of the two songs, and it's
Yeah.
really really crazy, and I love it. Yeah, and I like your note, Jason, about the colors. I agree that some of the shots are dated, but I think the highs of the cinematography are high enough that I forgive it. Yeah. What did you guys think of? Sorry, I had it down somewhere. What do you guys think about like the title and like what it represents as far as film and memory and the story overall? Either of you, I don't know.
I mean, I think for me, like it represents this path not taken, this like this fantasy about what might have been and didn't pan out, and this sort of regret and loss for this. We had this lot, we were going to do this thing, and nothing got built. We went this other direction. It's kind of like the story, right? It just sort of abandons all these threads, like we talk about Anne and Walt and their storyline, and the film just sort of like punts it halfway through, and we get the crater and we get the gap and we never get the answers. And so in some sense, I don't know, that's how it kind of, that's what it meant to me. Also, I will say music, that's Ry Cooder from Buena Vista Social Club, that's doing the music there. And
All right.
and then Neil Young and Jarmusch totally steal it for Dead Man. The same sort of idea.
I was gonna say it's very
Yeah.
similar to
Yeah.
this, but Dead Man does it a little worse. So
Yeah.
Oh.
Sorry, Jared. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with what Jason said. And I like that they don't give you the answer to that for a long time in the film. Like this setting, something happened there or didn't happen in actuality, but you suspect something happened there, but you don't know what until you see a picture and then you get like a vague hint. And I really like that because it's something that he's like held on to, and it means so much to him. Whether we get that or not immediately, we kind of assume it's some place he like wandered through or whatever. But it's such a powerful place, and calling the movie that puts it in your mind first before you even sit down and watch the movie. You think, okay, all I know about this is Paris, Texas, maybe who's in it. And so like having that in your mind creates the mystery right off the bat. And so I think calling the film that is great because it plagues your mind almost as much as it plagues his mind in the film. And so I think it's an excellent title.
You never even go there. I think that's a trip,
No.
right? Like it's
Yeah.
like they're at all these places and they're driving around all across country. They like never even make it to Paris, Texas.
No.
Crazy. Yeah, there's a quote in the first act when he or maybe second, I don't know, but when he's showing Walt the picture and he says about Paris, Texas, he says, "Mama told me that's where she and Dad once made love, so I figured that's where I began. I mean me, Travis. I started out there. So yeah, I agree with what you guys said, and I think." Even more, it means like for Travis at least, the story and the significance of Paris, Texas is about going back to the beginning, both internally and externally. So he has this external journey going back and forth between LA and Texas, various cities in Texas, and and eventually making his way back to Jane. And then he also has this internal journey where he's at the beginning. He has this like childlike personality because he has no memories. He doesn't. He's slowly relearning how to become a man, how to become a father, and so yeah, like and I think that's there's also an interesting quote, or not even a quote. It's on a poster while he's walking. There's this little sign that says, "The dust came to stay. You may stay or pass on through," or whatever. And yeah, it's really interesting the way the movie shows wandering as a behavior, like him, his mind wandering internally and his body wandering externally. But the story kicks off as soon as they go back to the beginning, as soon as he traces his personal Paris, Texas.
That's nice.
Yeah. Shall we get into favorite scenes?
What?
Sorry?
Okay. I can talk about my favorite scene.
What were you going to say, though?
I was going to say that, did you notice, speaking of signs in the film, that at one point they drive by this old dilapidated marquee that randomly says "super bad"?
No.
I was like, I'd never heard that like term before, and I was like, what? And there's no context for it. It just says like "super bad," and he drives right past.
Judd Apatow's been working on that.
Yeah,
movie
right.
a lot,
I was like, Judd.
that was the marketing ploy.
Yeah. I thought that was
crazy.
Yeah.
What are your favorite scenes, Jason?
I think I mentioned it before. I love the scene at the end. With Harry Dean Stanton standing like under the green parking lot lights, and the sun is setting, and he's like watching. There's some Kuleshov effect going on there, but like he's ostensibly watching them, Jane reconcile with Hunter, from the parking lot garage, and I think that moment is, really striking. And I think most of my favorite scenes in this film are at the end. And it's rare, actually, sadly, that third acts are actually, it's rare that a third act is the best part of a movie. And I really kind of feel like in this one it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. All my favorite scenes are at the end. Any scene with Jane and Travis immediately shot to the top. Especially that final one where he gets the courage, him sitting backwards because he can't even face her, even though he knows she can't see him, was amazing. I love that. Just a simple blocking move, and it was so effective. But there's one scene before he meets her. It might actually be after the first meeting, where he's just walking on a bridge and some guy's just yelling nonsense. And it takes him aback so far. And it's a great reminder, because at this point he's kind of gotten used to society again. But that's a great reminder of like what's going on in his psyche. Just this interaction between the two. He's like petrified. He doesn't know how to act. And it makes you feel for him. It makes you really latch on to how aloof he is as a character. And I think it's such a weird offhanded scene that like doesn't really pay off or go anywhere. But I love it so much. Even the sound design of him like yelling like 30 seconds before you even get to him is brilliant. There's this weird tension about it. And him kind of skirting around him is great. And I loved it. Something about that scene just struck me. So all of those.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I agree about the final meeting between Jane and Travis. I'm a sucker for creative two shots, and and that scene is the king of those.
Yeah. That's a good top 3, by the way. Creative two shots.
I'm trying to think of that one. There's this really awesome one in Eat, Drink, Man, Woman when the camera like rolls over the table of like all the food being prepared, and then it stops on the two of them just smoking.
It's kind of is it a reference to Wings? That shot where it goes like through the whole dining room? I don't remember.
I don't know
exactly, but it might be.
Mm. Anyway, back to Paris, Texas. I love the second half of the scene too when she turns her back to him and is speaking directly into the little microphone. And I get to because the movie, I'm like, man, what a jerk! She left her kid behind with her brother-in-law. Like, what the hell? And then, but then I when you see and understand what the situation was, and that he was abusive, and that she was fleeing, and that she's been healing from an equal amount of trauma. It's absolutely heartbreaking, and I love her monologue at the end because it's the wording of it is very vague, but like you totally understand what she's saying. And then I also another scene that really sticks out to me is when he's doing chores around the house. It's there's this shot of him from the outside, and the kitchen light's green, and he's just singing in Spanish for no reason, and you're like, whoa, what? and I realized watching it the first time, I was like, man, this guy just hasn't been walking. Like, he's been living an entirely different life. The fact that he like knows this song for no reason, and he knows how to polish shoes, he knows how to clean and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's been everywhere.
What I also like about that is that like there's this difference between like memory in your head and then like kind of like a physical, like almost embodied memory, just because you're touched, or affected by something, and then you forget, it doesn't mean that it doesn't still exist inside of you. You're not just a sum total of the things that you remember. There are these things you don't remember that have still been formative.
So good.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, gentlemen.
Speaking of things you don't remember,
yeah,
I think it's time for Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind. Unless you guys have any finishing thoughts. Nope. Cool.
No. Yeah.
Before we jump into it, we've got another installment of
Cool.
Bad reviews.
Jared reads poorly written reviews because it's funny and it makes him laugh and stuff. This one comes from Fuba Red, which is for some reason a great name. I like it.
Wait,
calling
what is it? Are you sure it's not Fubar Ed?
It could be.
Right? Fubar? Fucked up
Yeah,
beyond
it
all
could-
recognition, right?
It could be Fubar Ed, which
I
makes
choose
this even
Fubar
better.
Ed.
Yeah, we're going with that now. Thank you, Fubar Ed. He called it absolutely worthless garbage, giving it a 1 out of 10. Saying, I finally watched Eternal Sunshine this weekend. What a piece of absolute unadulterated crap from beginning to end. I mean, I've seen a lot of bad movies recently, but this has to rank as the absolute worst. And this won an Oscar for Best Screenplay. God, the people of Hollyweed must all have their head of their collective rectums. Now, I hate Jim Carrey, but he was absolutely horrid in this, as was Kate Winslet. Did the director actually expect anyone to feel anything for these two-dimensional stereotypes? And the director must have gone handheld camera 101 to learn his craft. Talk about annoying. I want my 25 cents back. At least most of the garbage I've watched recently was mildly entertaining, but this wasn't even that. Did anyone believe they were saying anything significant about the human condition? If so, go back and watch Renoir or Bergman or De Sica or Kurosawa, or just about any of the great directors. Even Ed Wood knows more about the human condition than the bozo who wrote this.
Man,
taking Charlie
Yeah.
Kaufman to the mat.
I know.
Whoa.
Just final swing and punch at Kaufman.
I love the
Yeah.
ones where like the reviewer feels hurt by watching.
Yeah,
the
they're like
movie.
personally offended.
Personally assaulted. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Fubar Ed here has never been through a breakup or anything.
No.
'Cause he must have had a very peaceful life, because this movie resonated with me wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
2004, directed by Michael Gondry, who has done Be Kind, Rewind. And it stars Jim Carrey, Kate Winslet, and a great little film about memories and what memories are worth holding on to, and if it's worth taking the good with the bad. After Kate Winslet's character Clementine undergoes a procedure to erase her memories of Joel, played by Jim Carrey, Joel finds out and he wants the same thing done. And he kind of comes to regret it during this nightmarish sequence of events where he watches all his memories of her flood away. And I think it's a fantastic film. Weird story about me in this film. I thought I'd seen it for the longest time, but I hadn't. This was my first viewing of it. And I don't know why I assumed that I saw it. For the longest time, I was like, yeah, that movie was great, but I genuinely just hadn't seen it. I don't know what movie I was thinking of, but it's great, and I loved it. I thought it was super inventive. It was super fun. I thought the performances were great. One thing that stuck out to me about both characters was they were so immediately unique and recognizable, in a way that you don't kind of see in a lot of cinema, where they're just from the get-go, you're like, this is their personalities, this is how they clash, but also why they're great for each other, within like one scene on a train. And I think it's so hard to pull that off, to have such immediately like recognizable characters as human beings that maybe you know in your life or that you can easily pin down, but still unique enough to stick out as their own, and be kind of gravitating in that way. So I thought it was very character driven, and I loved it because of that. I thought it was amazingly written. Charlie Kaufman's a fucking weirdo, but we love him for it. This is our second foray into Kaufman on this podcast. First being Adaptation. Go watch that episode. It was a good one. But yeah, I love this movie. I thought it was trippy as hell. Beautifully shot. There's these series of like vignettes that look like paintings. The one that probably is most obvious is the one that they use on the poster of them on the ice. But it's a beautiful film, both in its message and its appearance, and it was engaging throughout. And so for that reason, I gave it a solid 9 out of 10. What did you guys think? Starting with Jared. You know, we've been giving our guests too much attention. We gotta knock him down a pedestal.
Oh man, yeah, I'm kind of the same. Not super the same, but like almost in the same boat as you. Like I thought I had seen the entire thing because I've like on TV I've just seen like it in chunks over the years.
Yeah,
and there's definitely a lot that I missed, but I was very familiar with this movie going in, and but I was like watching it from beginning to end is really really interesting. I love the way the plot kind of plays out because you start at the end, and then where they have their second meet cute, I guess, and then then you're suddenly pulled into the middle of the movie, and the protagonist progresses forward towards the end by showing us the story from the middle to the beginning, backwards, Memento style. And then meanwhile all of the side characters are all progressing forward normally, and then everyone meets back at the end. And I think it's a really awesome structure. I think it's excellent writing, obviously. Kaufman killing it again. I understand and empathize with all the characters, even the ones that or not with all the characters, but the main two characters. And I can feel Kaufman's like tricks and like talking about the themes, but I'm never like pulled out of the story. And I think that's really that's something that only he can do, I think. And it never feels self-indulgent. I don't know if it is, but it doesn't feel that way to me. I think, you know, Jim Carrey is universally praised for this movie. So is Kate Winslet. I think
universally, we got Fubar Ed over here.
Oh,
strongly disagree.
Yeah, Kate Winslet this is probably my favorite performance of hers. It's amazing and brilliant. She treats the Clementine's mood swings with respect and sincerity. And we can talk about her a little more in depth later. But I love the sound; like it keeps me on my toes from scene to scene. I love the visual style. Like all of the special effects are in camera, or most of the special effects are in camera, which is cool. Um, and even though like the movie's intentionally convoluted because of the way they want to deal with memory, um, you know, every individual scene and every individual transition is treated with sincerity, and I think that that's really cool. I think where the movie loses me is in the little narrative about the doctor and his assistant.
Mhm.
I saw it coming a mile away, and even though I love Tom Wilkinson and I would die for Kirsten Dunst, I just didn't care for that little piece. I know it's necessary, but whatever. But yeah, super strong movie. I love it. 7.9.
Yeah, I mean, I like this movie a lot. I have fond memories seeing it in the theater in 2004. Um, and I remember it. I always think of it alongside David Gordon Green's All the Real Girls. And for me, this was really kind of uh, the birth of like the manic pixie dream girl thing,
Yeah.
where you had these men who were shy and introverted, and these women who were outgoing and bold and both terrifying and also like deeply alluring, which
Yeah.
I'd never seen in movies, like, but it was totally like how I was. I'm like this super passive, meek, sensitive man. But the movies I was raised on, it was like Bruce Willis just like kills everyone and then he just grabs the girl, and
Yeah.
like men didn't talk about their feelings. And I remember just being so struck by Jim Carrey just talking about like, well, I was intimidated by you. You scared me.
Mhm.
You said this line, about go ahead and go, and it hurt my feelings. And I just remember like being like, holy shit, like you can do this in movies. This is what a guy can be. And I just remember the vulnerability and, just being excited about portrayals of masculinity. And I talked about it in my application to grad school. And a lot of my first year film at State is this kind of dynamic where it was like a guy who had this like really kind of flighty, beautiful, terrifying girlfriend that, like he was drawn to and terrified of. And she wanted to watch him pee and he like couldn't do it in front of her, and the shame that grew out of that. And like, and so anyway, it was really influential to me, mostly for those reasons. Um, but I do like what it has to do with memory and the use of in-camera effects to kind of convey those things. There were other ways that obviously people do that, but I like that he kept it all in the same shot. And the overall message of like, you need your pain, man. You can't, like is so important, like you got to hold on to your pain. You can't just get rid of it, especially these days with digital culture and social media and blocking and, like just finding the news that you want. Like you need that conflict. It's formative. And so I like that messaging, even if it's a little simple. I think I didn't have much more to say. I was in the cinematography is by Ellen Karras, and it's always great to see lady cinematographers, get opportunities like this, and she did a great job. I thought the handheld camera work was wonderful, and I like that the mise en scène is really colorful and bold, but the cinematography is actually pretty muted, and it ends up in this really interesting kind of pastel palette that I thought was fun.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Jared mentioned something that I think could be a decent start to our deep dive into this. Oh, did you rate it? I'm sorry.
I
I don't know if you did.
I'm giving it an 8.3 out of 10.
8.3. Excellent
Nice.
score. But yeah, Jared mentioned something that I kind of want to circle back to, and that's the like structure of it. It's a weird structure. I loved it. I think I love movies that kind of jump around in time. Linear gets boring after you've watched so many movies. But I think they executed it well. I do think they kind of showed their hand a little early, which was part of the things that kind of dropped it down in score for me. That the meeting on the train wasn't their first meeting. He says pretty early into the film, "Oh, I met you at this beach on the party," and then they kind of try to make you forget that until they come back to it. But they
Yeah.
say it so plainly that it's not like a hint or like something to kind of push you that direction. It's more so that, and I think it would have been a more powerful reveal if they had not had that. Maybe just work through the memories from breakup to meeting, and then kind of have this bigger reveal at the end there. So I think they could have hit that a little harder, but it's a small gripe to have with an otherwise intriguing structure to me. But what you guys think on the structure and how it kind of ties into the theme of memory and holding on to those memories?
Yeah, I love I love it as well. And I like the kind of like really the every confrontation with a different memory feels brutal and
Mm.
feels I know Jim Carrey was applauded for being restrained on for being restrained in this movie, but I was reading that he was like very like very thrown off because like everybody else was allowed to improvise except for him, which is which must have been so painful.
Yeah.
Um,
You
and
do get
I
one classic Jim Carrey moment where he's a little baby. he
oh
got
yeah
he got to shine his Jim Carrey-ness once.
yeah, and the whole movie like with that brutality, like he never gets a break, and he never gets a chance to really breathe and take except maybe at the very in the very beginning memory in the washed away house. Um, he talks about his experience a little bit in the movie Jim and Andy, The Great Beyond, and he was saying that the director was telling him in an initial meeting like you're I need you to not heal from your recent breakup because you're beautifully broken right now. And he's like, that's how fucked up this business is. And I was like, oh shit. Like, and that's kind of what made me like hesitant to watch this at first. But honestly, like, uh, you know, lately he's been saying it's, he had a positive experience overall. I don't think like the way that the way that the structure plays out, it doesn't fetishize his pain. It doesn't like make it trauma porn movie, because ultimately there's this deep desire within him that he doesn't even know until the end, that he wants to move forward and that he wants to try again. And so I like that the structure pays off that way, that it pays off in a hopeful way.
One thing that I appreciated about the relationship, and I'll talk a bit about the structure in a second, was also that there were no like external circumstance. It wasn't Romeo and Juliet, where their love was pure and there was this external thing that was dividing them, right?
Yeah.
That's a more kind of, in my opinion, a more conservative and reductive idea of relationships. Like this was a portrait of two people that just sort of tore each other apart, and it just didn't work out. And it didn't take anyone else's influence or any extenuating circumstances. This is more like kind of John Cassavetes relationships, where
Yeah.
you just put two people in a room and they're going to be at each other's throats, and you don't need to have like class differences, race differences, fate or history, and so that's one thing that I really liked about it.
Yeah, and sorry to interrupt, but
No.
I got some thoughts about that. I want to let that go. Yeah, I loved it too. And what makes that even better is them agreeing that it's still worth it at the
Yeah.
end, where she's like, "I'm gonna like grow aloof and I'll resent you," and he's like, "I'm gonna be scared of you," and all that. And so they're so honest about like they're like, "Yeah, we'll probably break up." But we had so much taken away from us, so it's worth remaking those good memories.
Mhm.
And I think it's a beautiful comment on that. Like, sure, you might know something might end poorly, and you
Yeah.
might be hurt by it because you are two different people.
Mhm.
But it's worth taking that leap. It's worth taking the shot.
Yeah.
And I think it's a beautiful portrayal of that relationship that you mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very kind of mature
Mhm.
representation. And again, like thinking about today's era of like virtual relationships, and people would rather just be gaming and in environments in which they are completely catered to and are increasingly incapable of like compromise or being met halfway, because much of their experience they don't have to. I think about
Yeah.
like the struggles with Japanese teens right now in this culture of like shut-ins, where they just like don't even, they're no interested in not interested in relationships at all. You have to give up too much. There's too much pain.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't want to take
Yeah.
us into the weeds. But yeah, I like that. And I agree with who was it? Jared did, or Jared A. I think said that the Tom Wilkinson Kirsten Dunst thing didn't quite.
Yeah,
That was me, yeah.
Yeah, and I would agree. It. I think if there's a criticism of his script, and I mean, I think it's a great script, and obviously won the Oscar and all that, is that he has a premise that's really engaging, and he doesn't quite get a full 3-act story out of it. And so he's got to shoehorn in this subplot to take up room, but it really kind of echoes a lot of the same ideas. And so it just sort of dilutes the power a bit. And so structurally, I didn't really enjoy those detours because I didn't feel like they were a different perspective. But I mean, I don't have solutions about how you turn what is a good premise into a more fully realized script. But yeah, structurally, that was something that I kind of struggled with.
Yeah, and I agree with both of you. I could have done without. Although it is the catalyst to Mary sending everybody their files and that
Yeah.
big reveal.
Yeah.
Which also, why does Kirsten Dunst always play people named Mary or Marie? Is it just her thing?
Oh wow.
It was bothering me the whole time. That and then mispronouncing Nietzsche the whole movie both got under my skin. But yeah, so I like that she's this catalyst to like breaking the news to all these couples that they are missing part of their lives. But the way that they go about it by having that whole relationship with her boss, very shoehorned in, very out of nowhere, and like just kind of unnecessary. I think maybe having her, because this was the first time that she saw the procedure. I think they allude to that. But maybe her seeing like the brutality of it, or like how unethical that is, and having like this realization that like, oh, I'm doing kind of an evil thing by taking away part of these lives. I think that would have been enough. I don't think you need her getting in between him and his wife accidentally because they used to have this thing. Yeah, I'm in agreement with both of you on that.
Mm-hmm.
Favorite
What else?
scenes? We're over an hour. Maybe that'll probably lead to other conversations, but
Yeah, I got you.
I have one, and it's one of my favorite scenes in any movie. It's a very small scene. It's when they're visiting their friends, and one of them is David Cross, and I forget who David Cross's wife is.
yeah.
And
Jane Addams.
Jane Addams, thank you. And they're having this fight, right? And you hear this banging and hammering and ruckus through the entire fight, right? And it's just like in the background, and you don't know what it is, and it mirrors their fight. And then at some point, someone yells at David Cross, and they cut to him, and he's like, "I am building a birdhouse." And they just went. You never see it until the end,
Yeah.
and I just was like, "Oh, that's genius," That's like, oh god, that's one of my favorite moments. This is so good.
David Cross is so underutilized in
Right?
Hollywood. Like he needs more role. We got amazing taste of him obviously in Arrested Development, but I want more David Cross in my life.
Yep.
He's great. I like when Mark Ruffalo is lying down and smoking right next to Joel while he's asleep, and he's
Pop punk Mark Ruffalo.
yeah, and he's talking about the Clash like such an asshole. Like, who cares, bro?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that the movie, like, you know, with him and Mary, they're like, you know, trying really hard. They're like young people who are like trying really hard to be deep, but they're not. They're just high, and that's okay. Um, but that scene was very like funny and relatable, and I also love the house coming apart in the water. Behind the scenes, there was some controversy because like it was a big insurance like thing, and the producer like ended up chewing out Michael Gondry for going through with it anyway. And he I think he yelled at him in front of the crew. And but you know, it looks great on camera, so I can't argue with the results. Um, yeah, I love it. It feels climactic, even though it's technically the first. Even though it's the beginning. Um, and it I love the kind of like forcing Joel to just say like, okay, like I gotta let this go now, and like yeah, it's just really cool. But I think my favorite overall was the okay between them at the very end. I think it's super sweet,
Mhm.
and it's such a like on paper that's really really hard to do, what they do in there, and it's a different okay every time each one of them says it, and they both say it I think only twice, and you know you can only that's something that you can only trust to Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet, and I think it really speaks to their abilities as performers. And I think again, sucker for creative two shots.
Added to
Yeah.
the top 3.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely up there.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of mine, namely the house crumbling down. I did also love the birdhouse scene. I marked that as one of my favorites, because I'm a sucker for like any comedy moments with anything, and for a movie that's like listed as a comedy drama, there's not a ton of comedy. You get those moments. You get some with Mark Ruffalo and Jim Carrey being a whole baby boy. All are those shining moments. So those were all kind of nice. Um, my favorite scene is actually probably the first when they're on the train.
Yeah.
I think it's great. Him starting out with like something pulled me to Montauk. Was intriguing right off the bat. Right away, you're like, okay, something's up here, and I loved that. It got me invested immediately. But also, you see that relationship that Jason and I have been kind of loving this whole time, where she's so intense. She's such an individual person, and he's so aloof and not this like machismo guy that we're used to seeing. And it's great. Like you get their what their relationship will be. Like you'll see, oh, it's going to be exciting. It's going to be something new for both of them. They're both taking like this risk, but you also see exactly what would tear them apart, and his
Mhm.
kind of distancing himself by saying, "Oh, I just want to like write in my notes or whatever." And it's great. It sets up both characters perfectly. It sets up their relationship perfectly. You see their flaws, but you see their positives. And I think it's brilliant character introduction through and through. So it really stuck with me, and it really set the groundwork for a movie that I now love. Now that I have seen the right movie, for some reason. Which on this podcast, I've gone on record saying that wasn't a huge fan of Jim Carrey, and that I think he's just the same exaggerated boy over and over again. But he's fantastic in this, and I got a little extra respect for him because of this. So it might take him off my overrated actors list that we did. It might have been enough.
Yeah, man.
That said, shall we move on to another little indie film that people may not have seen?
Yeah, let's talk about Blade Runner.
Yeah, but before we do, we've got
Cool.
reviews.
Got a little message from none other than James 3248 in everybody's favorite segment. Jared reads poorly written reviews of movies that we're watching because it's funny and it makes him laugh and stuff. He said, seriously? 8.3? Giving it a 1 out of 10. What a waste of time. 2 hours, however long of my life, wasted. I watched the director's cut and boy was it boring. Easily the most boring film I've seen since Avatar. Personally, I personally love sci-fi films, whether it be Star Wars or Alien. You can make a case that that's fantasy and horror. My favorite book of all time is Ender's Game. The film moves so slowly that I could feel my hair grow faster. There are literally 5 things that happen in this movie. People read way too far into it, and how it's supposed to be about robots were more than humans than people. Personally, I think that's a load of poppycock. When the original released, nobody went to see it. The original cut was given a commentary for a reason. The film was too long, boring, and didn't make much sense. The commentary helped the film so much. It gave it a story and stops the watcher from having to make up some random story to stop themselves from dozing off.
Sheesh.
Yeah. Which, like, correct me if I'm wrong about movie commentaries, but they say what's happening in the film. They're not adding scenes to give it a story. So if you're recognizing that there's a story in the commentary of the film, but also trying to claim that there is no story and people are adding one on, it's a weird weird thing there.
I like
Yeah.
that he thought that Blade Runner was like Avatar in its lack of action and boringness.
Mhm.
I mean, if you're gonna go somewhere to like grab a film that doesn't have a lot of visual excitement, there's probably some
also,
other.
congratulations to Avatar for retaking the highest grossing film. Re-released in China and it got some money.
That's some petty shit, actually.
Yeah.
but I guess the money's
Absolutely.
money.
That instance, and then when someone added a bad review to Paddington 2 just to
Oh, that
bring
was
it,
heartbreaking.
I was like, come on, dude. What an asshole.
Yeah, that was cruel. Paddington 2 is so good.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen it, and I don't know why I haven't seen it, because it's been literally since the day it came out. Everybody's like, why is this so good? I hate that I like it so much.
Yeah.
Movie of the year.
And you're like such a British comedy nerd too.
I know. I'm a failure.
Or at least you're not claiming that you saw it when you hadn't. So that's
true. I'm not Eternal Sunshine in this.
Right.
Oh man.
Oh.
All right. Well, I think that was it James 3248? Jim?
Yes.
Yeah. I think James is on to something. And in that, one thing I did notice rewatching it for our discussion was that there really are only like 8 scenes in that entire movie.
Yeah.
Like I forget like how deep they kind of go into each of these moments. And not a lot really happens. It's extraordinarily economical in terms of its storytelling. And that allows it to really kind of like stew in the look and the feel of it. So yeah, I mean, that was one thing that struck me was like, there's not that much really happening. But yeah, so Blade Runner, the reason that I wanted to talk about Blade Runner in relation to memory is that it's always been the questions it raises about memory and identity were always the most interesting to me. I've consistently felt like Blade Runner, the stuff that the film is most excited about, I'm not very excited about. Like James, I'm not super excited about more human than human, and same thing with Blade Runner 2049. Like I didn't really care about the replicants having kids. I was like, whatever, but the side themes are the ones that really got me excited. I thought Kay's relationship to his girlfriend, his Siri, Joy was fascinating.
Yeah.
And you know, the pain that he feels, and then to just see her, it's like it's like basically like you fall in love with your phone, and then you drop it in the toilet and you go and you buy another phone, like
Yeah.
I thought that was great. And so in Blade Runner, I always found the memory stuff way more interesting. And yeah, I mean, I mentioned that the reason I wanted to talk about memory is because of my dad. I'm making a film about my dad who's got Alzheimer's. And so he's coming to stay with us soon. And, he doesn't know who I am. He doesn't know who anyone in the family is. And you can show him pictures and they mean nothing to him. And so he's sort of operating in this post-memory state, where if you play music from the 50s, he can sing along, and that activates some things. But for the most part, there's nothing there. And so these ideas of like, well, your memory and your past is what makes you human, and is what like situates you in the world and gives you an identity. It's like, well, what does that say about my dad? Like, who is he? What is he? So that was, I'm filming that this summer. And so I wanted to kind of dig into these conversations a bit. The version that we watched, Blade Runner Final Cut, is the 7th iteration.
There's too many.
There's so many. I had to go on Wikipedia and like track what each one did and didn't do. So, I mean, really what makes this one distinguishable from the first cut. So the first cut had the bullshit driving through the forest at the end scene that had been added after audiences. It didn't test well with audiences. And it had a voiceover that explained things. There's a few other little things, but those, and the other one is the inclusion of the unicorn origami that basically cues the audience that he was one, that Deckard was one of the androids that had escaped with the others, and they had captured him and reprogrammed him. Which makes the movie like 30 times more interesting when you know that all of these replicants know that he's one of them, and they don't tell him. They all know, and they all sit on it while he's killing them, because they don't want him to lose that. So anyway, the differences in this final cut are that, right? That at the end we know that he's a synthetic, and we get a fully fleshed unicorn dream to establish that they implanted unicorn dreams. So ultimately, what's his name? Edward James Olmos's character does to him what he did to Rachel in terms of like outing her dreams. And then it's got no voiceover. And then it's got a little bit more violence. But it's subtle. Like I noticed that when he is stuck between Daryl Hannah's thighs in this version, she like gets up into his nose and like yanks it backwards. And like there's a couple extra whacks and some, that wasn't there. And I guess they reshot the sequence of Zora getting killed for this version when she runs through the glass, and they added her face digitally. But I couldn't get a lot of information about that. But I didn't think they'd filmed anything extra, but apparently they did. And they just added what I noticed in this version. Maybe it's because the voiceover isn't there, but the scenes are just longer. They hold on faces longer. It's kind of crazy how long they hold on Rachel's face, Sean Young's face, and Harrison Ford in these moments. Like, I think maybe that's the way that they're supplementing or trying to provide more character and depth. If it isn't really there in the story, is we're just going to sit in a beautiful close-up for like 30 seconds. So those are the differences. What I thought was ironic watching it again was in our conversation about memory is that I remember all the old versions, like I remember, this is when Edward James Olmos says the thing about blah, blah, blah. And, this is Deckard talking about how he pretends to not know this language. And, so it's almost like the term is like palimpsest. You can never really wipe away something. There's always something left over, right? Like on a dry erase board, right? And so I had the memories of all these old versions as I watched this version. So it's kind of hard to you never get to see it again for the first time, and so I thought that was fun. But anyway, in terms of our conversation about memory, and photographs. What I think, what's fun about the film is that it kind of, all the characters are trying to figure out who they are, right? And who their authentic self is. Blade Runner's all about authenticity. It's taught as like the seminal postmodern text. Postmodernism all about this like disconnect from the past and history, disconnect from the certainty of knowledge, the way that you're just sort of adrift in these, signs and messages. And so I can't see you. Go ahead. And so the photos they hang on to in this film as some sort of like desperate attempt to feel authentic, right? And it's amazing what an anachronism these photos are in the film. Like all of the craziness that you see, and they're like walking around holding these photos from like 1904, right? And it gives them something. But over the course of the film, the arc is that they realize that these photos, aren't their memories, but that also like, that kind of evidence is flawed. And that like ultimately you have to accept that your memories are fallible, that there are gaps, and that you have to just take these fallible, incorrect memories, whether they're yours or someone else's, and then integrate them with what are your more recent memories in order to have this sense of yourself. And so I like that arc. It makes me feel better about my dad and my relationship with my dad, that just because he's forgotten who we are and he's forgotten his entire past and all of it, in that moment he's still with me and experiencing things. And even if he doesn't remember them, like they're in there, and this is going back to the Paris thing, right? Like muscle memory, like the joy that he might experience at a certain moment, he won't remember it. I got to tell him like my wife was pregnant like 50 times and he had the same enthusiastic joy, and I got, and it just, because he learned it for the first time, and I just choose to believe that it's in there somewhere. And so anyway, that's one thing that I really kind of liked about the film. But I can stop there. And we can kick it around. I would give this film, there's so many versions. I would give them all between like an 8.5 and a 9. This is actually my favorite version. I like the slowness. And it does give the characters, the time we spend on these characters' faces gives us a little bit more. And I always like violence, so more violence.
It's great.
Yeah. I'm in agreement with you, especially on what you said, that like the memory theme is kind of your favorite part about that movie. I full agreement. I also, in tangent with that, the idea of like, am I a replicant or am I not? I think that idea throughout is also engaging. For that reason, I kind of like the director's cut more, because I think it has the unicorn but not the forest drive, if I remember right. I don't know. They all kind of blend together, like you said. But so like posing that question of is Deckard a replicant even harder? I like a little bit more. But yeah, I'm with you. I think the memory is the most important thing about this movie for me. I think it's the bones of the film in a way, and I love it for that. I think it's beautifully shot. It's crazy influential. It's Blade Runner. Like, I'm not going to be able to give anything that anybody hasn't heard 10,000 times. But I love this film. I think it's a crazy important sci-fi, and I think it's super well executed. And so for that reason and reasons that I'll say when we get deeper into it, I give the final cut an 8.2. I think I'd give the director's cut maybe like a 8.6 or something. Kind of all as a whole with all of them, probably around an 8.5 for Blade Runner as a series.
Yeah, my experience is a little different. I've only seen the final cut. I was I put it off for a very long time, and I was talking with like a hardcore Blade Runner fan, and they were saying like, for your first time it's like if you're gonna like pre-game before Blade Runner 2049, you should probably watch Blade Runner: The Final Cut first. And I was like, okay, cool. So I've seen it 3 times now, and I like it more every time. I think the first time I thought it kind of lived up to like every every side of the spectrum of Blade Runner criticism of like, yeah, this is one of the greatest sci-fis ever, or it's boring. And I felt all of those things at once when I watched it the first time. Like, it's every bit as boring, every bit as beautiful, every bit as confusing, every bit as meditative as everybody said it was. So I probably would have given it like a 6. And then second time I saw it, I was like, okay, I see what they're doing. And I really love it just as a mood piece. And I would have given it like a 7.5 then. And now I'd probably give it, for this third watch, I'd probably give it an 8.2. It's really an awesome, a flawed masterpiece, but a masterpiece nonetheless. Like you guys, I love the themes of memory. And I'm happy that, I'm always happy when I hear that a piece of cinema has like resonated in a different, in like a part of someone's personal life. So thank you for sharing that, Jason. That's really cool. And I'm looking forward to seeing your project when it comes out.
Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
send it to both of us if that
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
already a given.
Yeah, I love the Vangelis score. It's probably it's up there with my favorite sci-fi scores, the Cowboy Bebop, Ghost in the Shell, all those. I love the setting. I love the artificiality of it. I love how it's very dark but shaped by specifically neon. I love how the interiors are plain and the exteriors are grimy. I love I love the violence as well. The fight scene between Deckard and Pris is like really well directed. Well, the setup of it is really is like what I love about it. I think, it's easy to be brutal and gory. But the setup to it, which was really creepy with the doll room, is really cool. But and then the aftermath of her thrashing around in pain is really, really striking, and I love that about the movie. Yeah, I love the theme of memory specifically in Roy's character. I think Rutger Hauer gave one of the best supporting performances of all time in this movie, and every rewatch, his desperation and his fear becomes more tangible for me. And that makes his death scene so much more effective. Yeah, not a lot of bad things I can say about Blade Runner, because I love it a lot, and even as I've grown to love slower movies, like I don't even mind the pace anymore. Like I just I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I think the pace really works in its favor because it's a sci-fi, but it's also kind of a noir, like with the lighting, with the pacing, with the soundtrack. And so I think the slow pacing really
With the
leans into
saxophone.
that style, with the random sexy sax that just comes in out of nowhere. I loved it. But yeah, you mentioned the lighting too, and this watch especially, I was like, this is like the bones of this film is also noir, like through and through. You've got Rachel, the femme fatale, and it hits pretty much every box you could ask for.
I like I mean, for me, this film, in terms of creating another world that holds together in terms of image and costumes and all of it, like this film, I think is just right at the top. And I think what they do so much better than contemporary films is they put you in these spaces and they don't show you everything. I feel like these new films, it's like we got to get the biggest, widest lens we can, and we got to light everything to show everyone how big this is. We got to put the money on the screen. And it creates this like incredibly dense environment with all of these things everywhere, and then it's like, we're going to show you some of it, you know? And, you know, like you're always like, it just all feels so authentic and lived in, you know? And it's so different. And I mean, Alien was the same way, right? Like, I mean, if Scott has any like one gift, it's like to create these spaces. And they both feel so authentic and lived in, and everything feels of a piece. And so when I go back and watch it, like that's something I take away every time. It's like, oh, look at the production design, you know? It's fantastic.
Yeah. There's also a lot of like offhanded lines that lend to that too. She's like, would I be working here if I could afford a real snake?
Yeah.
And like stuff like that. It just,
Yeah.
it grounds the film in that world so well.
Yeah. Yeah. There's not a lot of dialogue, but what there is really effective. And I think it's interesting, Jared. I like that you used the word meditative, because like there are some films where like you build up all of this story background or issues or choices, and then you hold on a face and you watch them do all this thinking and processing, and those may be long takes, but there's a lot going on. And in this, you can't really tell if there's much going on. You know, they're these kind of opaque, you keep saying aloof characters, Jared, when you were talking about Travis. Like, I don't really know what's going on in those moments, but I don't mind kind of sitting there with them. And so I do less work in those moments, and I do just kind of feel a little detached, but I don't mind it.
Yeah. And sometimes you get a mediocre thesis film that does too much of that, and it's all just people's faces.
We're not gonna go there.
But at least it was
I
an
do.
8K. Sorry, go ahead.
I think you're the only one that roasts yourself that much for that decision.
I have to.
No, it was fine. I thought you earned it. One thing I noticed watching it this time with Roy in that speech at the end is that, you know, everyone throughout the whole film, Roy and Pris and Deckard, they all talk about these memories from long ago, from their childhood, as a way to kind of authenticate them. But in his dying moment, he's like, I'm going to tell you some shit I saw 6 months ago. You know, like it isn't things that were implanted. It's clearly, you know, the star beams glittering off Orion, whatever. Like that shit like happened to him. It wasn't implanted. And like he wanted in a dying moment to pay that forward, to share that with someone. You know, it wasn't a photo like, here, look at this picture I took of this attack ship on fire. You know, he was like, no, like I'm going to tell you about what I experienced. And so for me, that like demonstrated a kind of arc and growth, you know, the tragedy of Tears and Rain and all that shit and losing that. But also like leaning into his more recent experiences and wanting to share them and the importance of that. So I thought that was cool.
He alludes to it earlier too when he visits Chew, the eye manufacturer. And he says like, Chew, if only you could see what I've seen with your eyes.
With your eyes. It's a great line. Yeah.
Heavy shit. Heavy shit.
Yeah, I mean,
and
you know,
that kind of like lends to like, are these replicants human at the end of the day? Not the like more human than human, they're the perfect specimen thing, but like these experiences are still real. They still have emotions. They feel pain. They can love.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, like what really separates them?
I mean, they're more human, right? That's the whole theme of it is like Deckard's out there just shooting ladies in the back. Leon gets shot in the back of the head, you know, like he could
bleed.
like, right. Yeah. Like, yeah, there's blood and guts. Like and then Deckard has like no human relationships. Tyrell, nothing close to a human relationship. The cops are assholes. Every human in the film is a completely isolated dick. And then the androids are the ones that are loyal, they protect each other, they grieve for one another, you know, like the only ones you see expressing any kind of authentic emotion or loyalty or love are the synthetics. And so, I think it raises a lot of good questions.
I have failed yet 12.
Okay, my daughter. Maybe I can move this over here. and it'll look like I'm smart because there's books behind me.
For the last part of this, they're gonna be like, "Oh, Jason, you're so astute."
I know, right? So what were we talking about?
More human than human.
More human than human. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, right. The script's kind of, I think, written for you to kind of see that the humans. I mean, this is always his thing. Ridley Scott's films are, Alien's the same way. Like the horror of Alien is that humans are these fantastically, they're obsolete, right? Like the company wants to get rid of them. The alien is this perfect mechanism, and the same thing with Blade Runner. Like humans are obsolete. The synthetics are better. They're better all around, and they're more decent people. And so like the horror of these early films was, Scott really kind of like wrestling with like, this is it, like we're done. We don't deserve what we have.
Yeah, I was watching. It was this dude on YouTube. I can't remember, but he's super into like physics and like philosophy and shit. And he was making a point that humans are likely going to be the first to invent their successor with that AI and stuff. And I think Blade Runner goes along with that. Like these replicants really are the next step in evolution, especially as we learn later in the sequel that they can have children and stuff. That like we invented the next step, which is insane, and I think it's such a cool thing that this film explores as well. Favorite scenes, or should we continue along this path?
I'm good with favorite scenes.
Yeah, we can do favorite scenes.
All right, it's your choice, Jason. Why don't you kick us off?
Jared A.
Cool. Yeah, I mentioned it a little bit before. I love the killing of Pris. Daryl Hannah is always great, and the like, yeah, the just holding on her, thrashing on the ground is super disturbing. Every time I've seen it, and then they cut to Deckard's face when he shoots, and it's horrible and really really effective as far as speaking to the violence in the movie. I think the killing of Tyrell is also amazing. He says like, I want more life, Father. And it's there's no pleasure in Roy's crusade. He's crying while he's doing it. It's this really interesting like Frankenstein's monster dynamic. It's gruesome, it's terrifying, it's sad. I really love the opening. Seeing the world, because right away like what kind of a movie it is and what kind of like pacing you're prepared for. Yeah. The colors are all like introduced, and you look at science fiction, and I think there was science fiction before Blade Runner, and I think there was science fiction after. Especially in the like cyberpunk genre, and in the AI genre or AI type of sci-fi. Like, yeah, it reminds me of like every time that opening comes up, I'm reminded of how great this thing is.
You got some of the same favorite scenes as I. Both fights with each member of Antwoord, Chris and Roy, are fantastic. Especially Roy. I actually like Roy's hunting down of Deckard. Essentially, it gets very Shining with him like peeping through the tile wall. But both are intense and amazingly executed. But my favorite two scenes are probably the two tests that Deckard gives out. One on Leon and then Rachel. Something about it is great, especially Leon's, where he's kind of like slowly losing it. And you see that like, oh, these are like weird questions, but they're carefully crafted. And I don't think that without that scene, the one with Rachel when it hit nearly as hard. But something about like the close up of the eye, which also mirrors the shot of Deckard with the explosion. That's also cool. And I don't know, any glimpse of like you trying to figure out if these AI are human or these real memories. I just eat that shit up, and I love it.
Yeah, favorite scenes. I mean, I think I've seen Blade Runner at least 20 times. I mean, it was one of those I mean, it was when I was a kid. We had the VHS cassette, and it was like it was on there with whatever the Schwarzenegger film that takes place in Russia, not Rocky Four. Red something. He had so many of these. But anyway, I remember being on the tape with that. So I watched it so many times. And like increasingly, like I don't know. I'm in a place where what I like the most are the interrogation scenes as well, and the close-up shots, which is ironic because it's such a the production design and all the wide shots are just stunning. But like just the panic and confusion on Leon's face, how he comes across as such a human being, so emotional and raw, and the guy interviewing him like can't even look up. He just couldn't be less. He couldn't be more dispassionate about the whole process. And I remember the first time I saw it, I was probably 9 or 10, and he shoots through the table, and I remember the shock of that happening. You watch it now, and you can kind of see them hint at it. You can tell that he's doing something under the table and all this stuff. But anyway, that's the scene that for me is my favorite. And I lightweight kind of am beginning to really enjoy the scene with Rachel and Deckard back at his apartment. And the film gets criticized for these being really kind of plot-driven relationship there, and they don't really have a dynamic, and there's weird kind of Me Too things going on with him telling her, like, tell me to touch you and all this shit. But kind of after, I don't know, with the piano and all that. Anyway, I like that stuff.
Yeah. People kind of criticize that relationship, but I like it because deep down, whether they're aware of it or not, that they're both replicants, they've gone through incredibly similar experiences. They've had very similar lives. And so I think there is weight to the relationship rather than just kind of thrown into for the sake of having it.
Yeah. I mean, I think they have what do they have, like 2 scenes together? Like they're trying to cover a lot of ground in terms of building that relationship in just 2 scenes. And the unicorn.
2 of the 8 scenes of the movie, though.
Yeah, exactly, right? And the final cut has the longest unicorn scene in terms of it's got like the entire, you go in, you come out, you go back in. And that moment's, it's ironic because like at the end when they're driving through the forest in the first version, it feels like such a bullshit. Like such a leap from the world, you're like, never, this doesn't exist, But the unicorn, which is running through a forest in the middle of the film, feels perfect. It feels perfect, like such a dramatic departure from everything else that it's just shocking to see. The color green doesn't exist in this movie, but it's like there in that moment. And so anyway, I like that too.
Any other?
Is that all we got?
Any other notes about Blade Runner? Questions you had for us? Discussions?
No, I think we hit on most of what I wanted to talk about.
Nice. I got an A again.
You got an A for completing the project again. Before we go, Jason, do you want to toot your own horn and tell us where people can find you, where they can see your stuff? Anything you want to shout out or do? I'm
at a website, jasonjakaitis.com, JASONJAKAITIS. That's got some of my older work and some of my new work. So sure, you can go there.
Hell yeah.
And I don't know. If you're watching this, you're in high school, you should come to St. Mary's College of California and take classes with me.
Agreed. Jason is incredible professor, one of at least my favorites. I don't want to speak for Jared. He left an impact on me. He influenced me as a filmmaker. So if you do go to St. Mary's, check him out. take one of his classes. It's an important thing for you to do. You were one of the first people we wanted to have on the show. Weirdly enough, we're like, oh, we should get Jason. Like that'd be super cool.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And so I'm glad that we could finally make that happen.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
I meant to ask you earlier, actually, like, what's it like teaching high schoolers cinema? Like, is it?
Oh, well, I mean, right now it's not. So I taught high school filmmakers before I went to state. I ran an after-school filmmaking program in West Oakland. And that was great because everything you show them, they haven't seen before. And you're just like, every day you're blowing their hair back. And
even more, they don't have preconceived opinions on everything.
Yeah, they're not in the box yet, so you can just drop things on them and they're like, wow. So I love that. That was always the best job. That was the best job I ever had, and I knew it was when I had it. But St. Mary's is a college. It's a liberal arts college, though. So the difference is, whereas with you guys, like, when you took my 620, like you had taken 8 or 10 classes in cinema before then. There's 900 cinema majors. I never taught anything other than cinema majors. Liberal arts college, you're teaching across all majors. And there isn't a lot of stacking. And so in some sense, it's good because I'm having that high school experience of like, no one has any preconceived notions about film or filmmaking. So I get to kind of hit them with, with stuff that I think they'll be excited about. But the challenge is like, they don't know who Claire Denis is. Like we're not going to have those conversations, like the depth, there isn't the same opportunities for depth, but there's breadth. And so at first I really struggled with that. I wanted to have the kind of conversations we had in our classes and I wanted them to make work like that. But that's not going to happen in this setting. And the pleasures are just different. The opportunities are different. And I had to kind of like, be like, okay, what I'm going to do is just, inspire some people about this medium, maybe help them use it in their careers as kinesiologists or, whatever, and let them go. The analogy I make is like, like for you guys a little bit, I feel like I was, like we talk about early film theory, right? Like Andre Bazin and shit, you're laying a foundation. Right? You're like laying bricks and bricks and bricks and you've built this house. That's like the realist kind of understanding. And the formalist Soviet understanding was like shots collide together and then they explode and there's nothing left behind. Right? Yeah. It's a piston engine, and like you're not building a foundation, you're inspiring in the moment. And for them, I'm like, all right, you guys are the pistons, like I'm gonna show you a couple of cool explosions and I'm gonna cut you loose because I know you're not gonna be, or at least a lot of them aren't gonna be filmmakers. There is a film club. There are some people like that, but it's not like 900 rabid film enthusiasts that I get to kind of like play with.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Well, I wish you all the best with that and with your upcoming project this summer. And I'm thankful that you came onto our show and also in advance, happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
We're recording a week in advance, but yeah. Anyway, go follow Jason on his website. We'll put the link in the description there, and then follow the Jaredcast, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, podcast platforms, all the works. Anything you want to leave the people with, Jared?
No, done talking.
Okay. All right, audience. Have a great day. We love you. Goodbye.